this is going to be a free-flowing night, okay? Some formal questions from me, maybe some from you. So I want all of the panelists to jump in. Don't feel as if once we get going that we have to simply address this to you, and we shall get it go. However, just to start things out, our dear friend Whitley Strieber. Whitley, you have seen and touched so many things in your career. Many things have been unusual. The episode that happened up in your cabin in upstate New York, I think, continues to haunt you and plague you. Whitley has an implant near his ear that a doctor tried to remove, and he only got a portion of it. He couldn't get the whole thing. I've never asked you this question, and that was, what's going on this planet right now? Everything seems to be topsy-turvy, and you have a perspective that I think is as good as anything.
Oh, well, okay, that's a simple question to answer in about 4 or 5 hours. I'll try for the digested version of it. Oddly enough, the 2012 prophecy, which some Mayan scholars argue isn't even present in the Mayan calendar, but which others say definitely is, and without question there, seems to have a certain credibility, which is extraordinary considering the world in which the measurements were made and the time that has elapsed since then, and yet we find ourselves nevertheless at an extraordinary crossroads in terms of the way life is unfolding. We have reached, just in the past year, a kind of tipping point in terms of the atmosphere, which is 385 parts per million of carbon dioxide. This is going to change the way life unfolds on Earth very rapidly. And that's going to be amplified by the release of methane from the Arctic as Arctic melt continues. And just this past month, the United Kingdom has had its warmest April in 175 years. And that, as the sun wakes up again from its solar minimum, as it is starting to do in a very spectacular way, that is going to be exacerbated in an extraordinarily, and climate will change dramatically. You will see in the United States, the violent weather in the middle section of the country will become not just a weather feature, but an actual climactic feature. It'll be something that's more or less continuous year-round, up to a certain point for the next 4 or 5 years. Meanwhile, economically, if you go, I'm sure everyone here goes to the grocery store, and the gas pump's not the only place where prices are skyrocketing. And they are skyrocketing because, for 2 reasons. First, there are more and more people on the planet eating more and more and using more and more of the planet's resources. And second, our ability to produce is dropping. Just in the past few weeks, violent weather across the Midwest has affected the planting of the corn crop. Australia, 30% of the people who were farmers in Australia 5 years ago have had to leave the land because of the drought. And the result is that wheat production is plummeting. We already have a rice shortage on planet Earth. Burma was struck by a typhoon, a cyclone, excuse me, last week, I'm sure, as everyone knows. It's the 7th largest rice producer, and it's the absence of the Burmese rice crop is going to mean that there will be large numbers of people wanting for food next year, toward the end of this year and into next year. It won't simply be that they can't afford it, but it won't physically be available. This sort of change is going to continue and spread rapidly throughout the planet. And our social institutions, our economic institutions, our lives, our families, all of this is going to be directly and profoundly affected. And mostly, we hear about Paris Hilton. on the TV and the radio.
She's not here tonight?
Yeah, no, she's at home fooling with her dogs. Perhaps it didn't strike me as funny. She's got a lot of dogs, or it might be cats. I don't remember which. In any case, these are extraordinary and powerful forces. At the same time, denied by the government, rejected by the media, rejected knowledge, the knowledge rejected by science, this other extraordinary thing is happening in our world, which is this presence, where I don't know where to call it, an alien presence or some exponential ideation of a human presence, or something so strange that we can't even begin to understand it, is hovering closer and closer and closer to us every day. I was talking to a lady earlier who was mentioning to me that she was saying, well, they come up out of the ground. And that was one of the most extraordinary things that used to happen at our cabin. Exactly that. They would come up out of the ground. And so what in the world are they? What are we dealing with? What we're dealing with is, as pressure increases on the human mind, the human unconscious, and the human society, there are cracks coming in the cosmic egg, the same kind of cracks that develop in the minds of abductees, most of whom has started out their lives as children with some sort of traumatic experience that has led them into a situation where they can see something that most of us don't notice. But now that's changing. As pressure builds, more and more of us are noticing this, and it's getting closer and closer and closer. What will happen next? Well, I don't want to sound facetious or as if I'm being shallow in any way, because I'm very serious right now. In order to find out what's happening next, you have to do things like go on the internet. You like listen to Coast AM, because this is where the edge is. And it's where the people who are trying to tell the truth are. You cannot get it from the general media. They're living in a dream world. Their world is over. The Titanic's got the hole in it. It's sinking. If you look at the water in the glass on your first class dining table, it's just a little tilted, and it shouldn't be like that. Well, this is all about the tilt. That's why we're here. We've noticed. So
Whitley, Strieber.
Okay.
Thank you. You know, Jay, you just returned from Egypt, where they've had riots over food. Did you see any of that when you were there?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't see any food riots, but the government, 1 out of every 7 people in Egypt works for the military. So we have 10 million out of 70 million people that are working for the security forces. They're everywhere on the streets with machine guns, and I was told that it's just a pressure cooker waiting to explode. And when you have, there's 35 million people in Cairo, which is the population of California, put into a place smaller than Los Angeles, it's going to be very, very, very dangerous. And I don't want to be there when it happens.
No, and you know, so many people have come on our program predicting that something big is going to happen, probably sooner than later. And I think all of you probably feel that way too. I bet just with a quick show of hands, do you all have that feeling?